The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 7, DraftKings ownership projections, and I guess we're going to have some sort of an update for the picks too. If you're looking for a full injury report, I have separated both of the Friday shows into the DraftKings only and the injury report only. So if you're looking for spin on things like Marshawn Lynch or the ankle of Royce Freeman or the Carlos Hyde trade, Leonard Fournette's injury, you can check out more in-depth fantasy spin on that quick show later on Friday night. Remember, give both of them a huge like. And for this one, if you give it a like and leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section and let me know what percentage you think Nick Chubb will be owned in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker in Week 7, you have been entered into a draw for $20 DK. Now to break this all down with me from DK Live, it's Geoff Ulrich. What's going on, dude? I'm glad we didn't do this at like 11 a.m.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't start like 30 minutes earlier even, right? I mean, yeah, lots of things coming down the pipe. I mean, trades and guys getting ruled out who we thought might play. It's basically flipped the script for what we were expecting, I think, this week.
Well, let's jump right into it. Let's talk about the most owned and most tagged running backs. For this, we'll be using fansharesports.com tagging system, and it's going to be a little slow to catch up because most of the content has been released for the week. And you know that there are guys like Latavius Murray and guys like, obviously, Nick Chubb. They're going to skyrocket up that list in terms of ownership and really detract away because going into the week, it really looked like it was going to be the high-end guys and the high-end guys only. There was nowhere really to pay down unless it was with really fringy guys. So now you're going to see a lot of ownership drop into certain places because of what we're going to see. So at running back, the most tagged players of the week are Todd Gurley at number 1, Tariq Cohen at number 2, and Alvin Kamara at number 3. And the big thing with Kamara is people are sort of wishy-washy on whether they should start him or not because of the Ingram situation, because of the matchup, and the fact that Zeke Elliott is just a little bit lower in terms of the price point, and you know that he's going to control all of the goal line work. And right now, we don't know if that's going to be the case for Alvin Kamara. So a lot of those are sits, some of them are starts, but for Gurley and for Cohen, they're all starts. Now, let's go to those two guys that opened up near the bottom. Really the three guys, Murray, Duke Johnson, and Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's $3,600. What do you expect his ownership to come in at now? Like 20+%?
Yeah, I think Nick Chubb for the Millie, I feel pretty comfortable saying he's going to be over 30%. I just feel like the hype is already there. I think a lot of people already had it in their mind that he's just automatically going to be like an upgrade almost over Carlos Hyde because he was a pretty high draft pick and people were pretty high on him. So I'm anticipating higher ownership. I'm not sure about you, but I think over 30%. I won't be shocked at all to see that.
I could see that too. Do you think that there's an ownership level where you don't play him? Because this is one of the things that I talked about with Leone and Dinkmeyer in the season preview to DraftKings is that every once in a while you're going to get, I don't want to say a free square because there still is a split between Chubb and Duke Johnson in a game where they're underdogs and presumably passing a lot of the time. I mean, even in the past few weeks, we've seen Duke Johnson play over 50% of the snaps, that you don't have to have Nick Chubb, but he probably will control all of the goal line work over Duke Johnson if they run inside the 5-yard line. Do you have a preference between the two? Because I could see Duke actually outscoring him this week unless Chubb ends up with 2 touchdowns.
I mean, look, I prefer Duke too. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just me and it's the Browns and I just don't have that much faith, but I mean, Carlos Hyde has had a couple good games for the Browns, but he's a good back and he hasn't really been able to produce that much despite having basically all the carries, right? So I'm not sure, if Nick Chubb is just going to come in and be an instant upgrade. I'm not really anticipating that. And just to give some people some background on Nick Chubb, he's very good at the start of his college career, but he suffered a blown ACL and he did have some trouble coming back from that injury. And he really didn't look that good in preseason. So he's had a couple big runs here. Maybe he's getting back to full health. I'm not obviously 100% sure on that. I'm just letting people know what I've seen. And I'm not really anticipating this dominant back to come in. I'm not anticipating like Todd Gurley to come in and rip off a 30-point game. He could meet value just from the point he's only 3,600 and he could get a touchdown. But I think you need to dial back expectations a bit. I think the Browns want to use Duke Johnson more. And I think that might be part of this trade too. So I'm with you. I like the PPR upside of Duke Johnson in this matchup. Gerald McCoy is out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Does give a little bit more upside to the Chubb play, but I still would prefer Duke over these two right now.
I think that if you're going to construct lineups, and let's say you're making 10, you probably want max exposure to that backfield because of the price point and what that allows you to do with the rest of it, unless you're just playing pure game theory and say, you know what, I'm just going to fade this situation, which I don't think is the most sensible move. That maybe you split it up 50-50 between the two if you have a stronger inclination with Duke. Maybe you go 70-30 between the two. But I think that having the exposure to both Chubb and Johnson in separate lineups is probably the move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's fine. I think, like you said, you can go heavier on one. I'll probably almost certainly be going heavier on Duke Johnson, but it's not a situation where I think you just say, oh, I'm going to avoid it because it's a little bit too chalky. I think getting exposure to it's fine. I mean, Nick Chubb is probably a fine play for cash games too at that price point. Yeah, I think you pick one, you go overweight on the other, and getting some exposure to the other one, probably not a bad idea.
Well, one of the guys that you could potentially pivot to if you wanted to get off of them, we're not going to know this until Sunday morning, so I would recommend that everyone tune into the Pat Mayo Experience live, 10 a.m. Sunday morning on the DraftKings YouTube channel. In the first hour will be up on the iTunes and all podcast feeds around like 11:15 a.m. if you really want to get into it. But Isaiah Crowell may or may not play. This is looking a lot like what happened last week where he didn't practice, and then all of a sudden Sunday it was like, oh yeah, he's fine to play anyway. Then he's back into a split. But he's not completely off the injury report. He is still questionable. There hasn't been a lot of practice for him. So Bilal Powell could end up being the only back in the Jets backfield if Crowell sits, and where it wouldn't happen until like 11:30 a.m. Sunday morning that we would actually know this news if it's not announced before then, that people won't go to him, that Duke will end up with higher ownership and Chubb will most definitely end up with higher ownership, and that could be the pivot that people are looking for. And I mean, Powell by himself probably presents better value, although the matchup isn't quite as good. The concentration of his touches would be there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like the Latavius Murray play from last week, right? That one almost saved my week because nobody really switched over to Latavius, even though it was like a prime matchup and he had the backfield to himself. It's going to be a similar story to Bilal Powell. I mean, he's a good pass catching back too. So I'm 100% there. That's the situation I'll be watching for running backs Sunday morning, because when it's such a late switch or a late announcement, people just don't, most people aren't sitting at their computers to make these late switches. They're happy with the lineup they made. So you're going to get low ownership on Bilal Powell if Crowell's out regardless. So yeah, 100%. That's the situation I'll be watching for running back Sunday.
I mentioned that Tariq Cohen had come in second in the FanShare Sports tags. There was nary a sit tag for him this week, so everyone's really jazzed to play Ice Cream Cohen this week against the Patriots. But Latavius Murray now gets opened up because Dalvin Cook has been ruled out. He's $100 less. Do you think that Murray will eat into his ownership, or are people still a bit scorned by Latavius Murray? Because the week that he was chalk, he sucked against the Bills. Yeah. And last week, like you mentioned, no one really pivoted over to him, although that was the move.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think he's definitely going to eat into Cohen's, ownership a little bit. Cohen could still come in higher owned, but I think it makes Cohen a bit more of a better play because you'll probably get him at a bit lower ownership now. And I think people will go back to Latavius because they'll see what he did and they'll look at the situation. He's got the backfield to himself, so we have the weekend to process it this time. It's not a game time decision on Dalvin Cook, so I think it'll drag Cohen down a little bit. I'm still really high on Tariq Cohen. I hate the fact he's getting talked up by everyone this week, but I am happy that this could drag his ownership down. I still feel like between the two, I would lean Cohen. I just love the way I like this matchup. It's going to be up tempo. The Bears seem really committed to giving him. He's basically Alvin Kamara, just in a bit of a lesser offense, and he's only 5,100. So for me, I'm willing to ride that and see if the Bears keep giving him the ball.
So I guess the only other one that's down there right now is going to be the Kerryon Johnson, LeGarrette Blount situation, because it doesn't look like Theo Riddick's going to play. Now, presumably, all the snaps that went to Theo Riddick in these pass-catching roles you'd think would just translate over to Kerryon Johnson. But it's not above the Lions to say, you know what, we're going to activate Amir Abdullah, and he's going to be our pass-catching back. So are you going to go to any of the Lions running backs? Like, do you take the chance with Kerryon Johnson, who has the ankle problem but is going to play and look pretty good the past 2 weeks, but we know that Blount is going to get all the goal line touches if it comes down to it?
Yeah, he very well could. It's an interesting situation. I really like the matchup. I mean, Miami's does not have a good run defense. They're getting Cameron Wake back, and it should lead to like a few more carries for Johnson. And you also have Brock Osweiler on the other side. So, I mean, Detroit could get up big with like a pick six, and then it's all it's all Johnson, Blunt, right? So it's an interesting situation. I will be watching for Amir Abdullah. I'm pretty sure he's going to be active, but watch if there's any notes about if they're planning to actually give him carries or just use him as like an emergency pass or punt returner. That's kind of what I'm expecting. I think they've moved on from Amir Abdullah. I think they will give Johnson most of the Riddick snaps, but it's more of a chance than like the Chubb or Duke Johnson play or Powell if Crowell's out. So you're taking a bigger risk, but you probably get lower ownership.
Let's move to wide. Actually, no, finally. Do you think Carlos Hyde plays any snaps this week for Jacksonville? Because it seems way too late in the week to have him out there.
I could see, like I said before the show, I could see him getting activated in like a ceremonial kind of thing, just because, they just traded for him. Let's activate him and give him like 2 carries, but he can't know the playbook. So he's not going to be in on passing downs or like pass protecting or anything like that. If he does play, he's going to get like 3 carries in my opinion. So he's just a cross off this week and look to him next week.
Does that make TJ Yeldon still somewhat intriguing? Because that everyone's going to jump off TJ Yeldon here, that if he still plays 80% or plus of the snaps, he's still going to be viable. He's expensive, but now it feels like no one's going to use him. And the matchup's not great against Houston, but if he can get involved in the passing game, which running backs do against the Texans, then all of a sudden he does have considerable upside for a guy that's always going to be on the field.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to draw his ownership down. That's for sure. I mean, I don't think he was projecting to be highly owned anyways, but he's probably going to be like sub 5% now, right? So, or he definitely could be anyways if Hyde gets activated. Now, if Hyde's not activated, it'll probably bump him up a little bit too. So something to keep an eye on. But I could get over that. Or I could get on side with that. I mean, Yeldon's it's a higher pace matchup for Jacksonville too. They throw more, one screen pass to the house and he pays off. So.
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys in that range. Like not a ton of people are going to McCaffrey, James White, Yeldon, or Chris Thompson, and LaShawn McCoy, really in that like upper $5,000 to mid $6,000 level, because it seemed like everyone was paying up for Zeke, Kamara, or Gurley, and then that was the only move. You could pay down to like Tariq Cohen, roll the dice on Kerryon Johnson, but that was it. Now with all these new guys opened up at the bottom, I think it's going to affect the way that we see people process the top end of running back, and that might bleed into wide receiver a little bit as well. So let's talk about them, the guys at the very top of the fansharesports.com tagging system in terms of receivers this week. We got Adam Thielen coming in at number 1. That's no real surprise. Robert Woods at number 2. Jarvis Landry at number 3. 3 expensive receivers. In full disclosure, the guys after that are like Josh Gordon, Willie Snead, Jermaine Kearse, Taylor Gabriel, cheaper options as we get down to it. But right now I have Adam Thielen projected around like 24-25% ownership, and Stefan Diggs only around 8 to 9%. Do you think that Adam Thielen is 3 times more likely to outscore Stefan Diggs this week?
No, I mean, I like the spot. This is the kind of spots I usually try and take advantage of. They almost never work out for me because I always hit them on the wrong week or something. But getting Steph Diggs in this spot or just going over to Steph Diggs makes a ton of sense to me. The Jets have a bad secondary, and this could be a week where either both players go off or just Diggs gets the end zone touches, and Thielen still ends up with like 20 points, but he doesn't get into the end zone, and he only catches like 8 passes or 9 passes, right? So I like it. I love these tournament leverage spots where one guy just gets a little bit overblown and another guy like Diggs, who's equally as talented, comes in at lower ownership. So I'm all over the Steph Diggs thing. And you mentioned Robert Woods, same kind of thing with Brandon Cooks. It might not be as big an ownership gap, but I'll take Cooks over Woods in this spot if he's going to be lower owned.
Well, I mean, the guy that's going to be the lowest owned of the bunch, they've already said that Robert Woods looks like he's going to transition back into the slot to replace Cooper Kupp, leaving Josh Reynolds on the outside. And I don't know if that's going to affect the ADOT of Robert Woods, because Kupp's was considerably lower because Woods was getting to all the targets down the field. Maybe that will translate into Josh Reynolds. It doesn't seem like people are going to jump on the Josh Reynolds train. There's going to be a few, but I have him projected around like 6-7%, while the other guys are at like 25, Cooks around 17. Like, people love those guys. But you're getting $3,500 for Josh Reynolds. Now with Nick Chubb opening up, Reynolds isn't just like hey, I need somewhere to pay down, I'll take Josh Reynolds. That could hurt his ownership in a good way for anyone who still wants to use him. Will you be using Josh Reynolds? I mean,
I probably you hit the nail on the head, because Josh Reynolds was almost like developing into like a cash game play for people who needed the value. Now you don't need to use him in cash games because you can just use Nick Chubb, right? So I look at Reynolds as more of like if you're going to go with a Goff stack, you can throw him in there. You could throw him in with Woods or with Cooks. He's a cheap thing. He's transitioned to more of a tournament target for me. But I'm probably going to go lighter on him. Like you said, Woods is going to be playing the slot. So little bit less likely Reynolds, sees a ton of targets now, in my opinion. But I think he's very viable with like a Goff stack because I like the upside of this Rams passing offense this week.
How high do you think Jermaine Kearse gets up to at 41? I love Jermaine Kearse this week, and obviously there's going to be no Terrell Pryor. There's going to be no Quincy Enunwa. It's just going to be him and Robbie Endicott out there and a bunch of like crappy tight ends, and potentially no Isaiah Crowell either. Like this just really reeks of like a double-digit target game for him. I'd be more comfortable just continuously rolling out Kearse, especially in cash games, because it seems like his floor is going to be super safe.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think in cash games, it does actually make a lot of sense. I'm just not big on the Jets passing offense. They've had some games where they've passed the ball like 20 times and like completed like 12 passes. And, going up against a real team like Minnesota, it's a little bit scary from that respect. But again, the floor for 8 targets, 10 targets, it seems pretty safe. So, maybe not for tournaments for me. I don't think I'm going to go there, but cash game, I can definitely get behind it.
Well, it does seem like Jermaine Kearse and Willie Snead the fourth, or Willie Snead IV, because he's dehydrated, are going to project out around the same sort of ownership. Like, I'd much rather go with Kearse. Not to say that Snead can't have a great revenge game against the Saints, but he's still very clearly number 3 in this pecking order in the Ravens offense.
Absolutely. No, I 100% want Kearse just from the fact that, like you said, if the game does get like, up tempo and the Jets do throw 40 times, out of character, then they're all going to Kearse, and Kearse has the monster game. I don't see the upside with Snead out of the fact that obviously they're playing the Saints, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's just going to get, targeted relentlessly. Kearse has that upside. I'm not really on Snead at all this week, to be honest.
Allen Robinson is doubtful with a groin injury. I'm going to go check right now, see if there's any update on him, just in case. Did you see? The last thing I saw is that he wasn't practicing, so that's not good.
He's questionable.
He's questionable?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, questionable for Sunday's game against the Patriots. But he was a DNP Thursday. I didn't actually see what was up with him. I mean, that's what he was listed as of Friday. I didn't actually see whether he practiced or not, because if he didn't practice on Friday, then all of a sudden he's definitely not going to play, because that
he did practice
okay
today. So we'll see. Game time decision.
So
I mean,
everyone's going to.
I guess he gets ruled out.
It's making everyone go to Taylor Gabriel is my point on this, which I think makes a lot of sense, but. And it's tough to wrap my mind around, because all those like sort of chalkier guys we just talked about, Kearse, Willie Snead, Taylor Gabriel, they're all in that $4,000 range. That Gabriel definitely possesses the most upside because he's a vertical threat as opposed to the other two, who are just simply more cash game players. They run low A-dot routes, they pile up a lot of targets in bulk, but where there's no one else around Jermaine Kearse, I could actually still see him being the better tournament play as well.
And here's the thing with Gabriel. I like him more if Robinson plays, right? I mean, like if Robinson doesn't play, the Patriots are just going to smother Gabriel all game. I mean, they're fully capable of doing that and say, beat us with like, Kevin White or whatever, So it's I don't really like this spot if Robinson doesn't play for Taylor Gabriel. He's not really a true number 1 receiver. He's a very good receiver. He's underrated, but he can do a lot of things. But I don't like him as like the sole target for Mitch Trubisky in that game. I think if Robinson comes in, it definitely opens up the field for him. I completely agree. Kearse might have a little bit more upside in that spot. And like I said, I kind of like Cohen anyways. So I'm not that high on Taylor Gabriel. I think if you're going for like a Trubisky stack, definitely you should use him. But I'm a little bit wary that the Patriots will just smother him and say, beat us with like Trey Burton or something like that. So
yeah, the periphery pieces of that Bears game could be the way to go, whether it's Anthony Miller, whether it's Trey Burton, maybe even Jordan Howard, for all we know, that they kind of swerve a little bit. You dodge a lot of this ownership and still get exposure to a high scoring game like that. The other like top ones, like, are you going to play Josh Gordon at close to 20%? Because I'm not. Absolutely not. I'm going to play Julian Edelman at like a fifth of the ownership, because I mean he's on the field all the time, and the Bears have actually been really bad against slot receivers, by the way. Like that's one thing. I mean, I do see the upside with Josh Gordon, because the Bears have given up. Their secondary isn't exactly what you call great. They're okay, but Khalil Mack's a little bit banged up. I like Edelman as a tournament play a lot this week, though. I think it's a good spot for him. Especially, again, it's just like the Diggs-Thielen situation. Obviously, you have to pay up for Edelman, which kind of sucks, but you're going to get way low ownership. I like the spot for Julian. Any of the – because Marvin Jones is probably going to play, but he's still kind of banged up. Do Golladay or Tate pique your fancy at all?
Not really. Just, I mean, Miami paced down team a little bit, and they have a pretty good secondary. If I was going to go there, I'd probably just go Galladay because I just feel like he's the best player there right now, and I feel like he's kind of, you know, moved into almost the number one target. I don't think I'd go with like the peripheral pieces like a Marvin Jones. It's not 100%. So if you are high on it, I would go Galladay. I think he's in play against almost everyone right now because Detroit does pass a lot, but probably just going to avoid that Miami secondary.
All right, the last one would be the chalk of Jarvis Landry in this great matchup up against Tampa. Going to be like 23 or so percent owned, potentially even higher, depending on if people want to save money or not. Dan from Thielen. He hasn't been great with Baker Mayfield whatsoever. The targets are there, receptions, not so much. Is that just flipped this week, or are people putting a bit too much stock that it's just going to instantly turn around because it's a good matchup?
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I mean, I just don't see it. Like we haven't seen it, like you said. I mean, we're kind of just going based on like Jarvis Landry's pass that all of a sudden he's just going to show up with like a 12 reception game or something. It really hasn't been the case. I mean, Baker Mayfield's been, pretty spreading the ball. I mean, he's giving Antonio Callaway targets, even though he drops every third pass. He's targeting Njoku a lot. Like, I just don't think that 7,300 for Jarvis Landry. I don't really care about the matchup. We haven't seen, that type of performance from him. So I don't know why you pay up for him, quite frankly. If you want cash game targets, just go with Njoku. I'd even feel better about Callaway at 4,300. I mean, I know he sucks, but like, he's getting targets. Eventually, he's gonna hold one in the end zone, and it's gonna go for a big play. So I don't know. I'm not over that play at all. It's chalky good, I guess.
Yeah, I don't love it for tournaments either. Like, if you really want to take a shot in that Cleveland game, Damian Ratley was the one who actually was able to catch last week, and he's in the $3,000 range. So, like, if you want to run the Mayfield stack, the best Mayfield stack that could be out there is Mayfield, Njoku, Duke Johnson. That might be the move.
I do like Duke Johnson. I agree. If I was doing a stack, I would definitely get him in there with Mayfield because I really feel like this move is as much about Duke Johnson and getting him more involved as it is about Nick Chubb. So the high trade I'm speaking about, obviously.
Quarterbacks, the top three in fansharesports.com tags for the week. Joe Flacco and Baker Mayfield are tied at the top. They're both number one. Jared Goff is number three. Other guys with projected high ownership, Mitch Trubisky, Cam Newton. CJ Beathard has a lot of tags this week, but it doesn't seem like it's going to translate into ownership at all. Like, he could be a 1%er as it pertains to the Millionaire Maker. Do you have any interest in him? Because he's throwing the ball like 900 times a game.
I have a little bit for sure. I mean, like I mentioned that game off the top. I mean, I think people are just underestimating how many yards and points the Rams defense have been giving up. I mean, for all how bad San Francisco handled the end of that Green Bay game, they still put up a ton of points. Marquise Goodwin is healthy. Kittle's healthy. All their pieces are there. I mean, obviously they have a downgrade at quarterback, but I could see them getting into a shootout with the Rams and keeping that game semi-close. So I don't mind Beathard, and I don't know why. Like, people really going to play Joe Flacco this week? We're really like doing this? I don't get it. Do you, Pat?
Yeah, I like Joe Flacco this week. I think that's an interesting. I think it's an interesting side of that game to be on because I do think it's going to be super high scoring. Like, Breeze is the one that confounds me. Like, if Breeze is truly going to come in with no ownership, then I mean, they're almost like the same price. Like, how often do you see Drew Brees at sub $6,000? But I think that Flacco is pretty safe. They throw the ball a ton. They play at a super high pace. So the anti-Dolphins in that respect. And if the Saints can put up points, I guess we should have talked about that too. With Ted Ginn out, are you going to play like Traquan Smith? You going to play some Cam Meredith? Because it seems like Traquan's the play if there was one.
I don't really like this matchup for the Saints. Maybe it's just that, they're heading outside and I'm buying into that narrative too much, but I'm definitely not going to go with their outside guys. I know they hit last week, but I think that was kind of a special game in the Dome. I think if I was going to go with someone there, I'd just look for the Alvin Kamara big game. That's really the only Saint I'm going to be heavily targeting at all, I think, this week. I don't know. I just feel like this game might be a bit of a disappointment. It's kind of my lean headed in. Obviously, I'm not huge on Joe Flacco. I feel like there's just so many other big name quarterbacks in good spots. I mean, I think for tournaments, Brady, Goff could both have big games. I'm just not going to buy the chalk Joe Flacco. If he was anti-chalk, I'd probably be, okay, yeah, I get it. I mean, he's playing the Saints, and he's a good price. I'd take some chances with Baltimore stacks, but he's going to be the chalk. I'll just skip it. Easy decision for me personally, but
Well, I
We'll
think
see.
I think game theory wise this week at quarterback that it doesn't really matter who you take. I don't think that there's going to be one chalk guy. Like I'm just looking at my projections right now, and
Yeah.
I have one guy above 10%, and that's Jared Goff. Everyone else is just in like 8%, 7%. There's a whole bunch of those guys, but it's fairly flat across the board. So I wouldn't be fading or playing someone just because of ownership unless they were legit like 1%. Like Kirk Cousins is someone that is super low on. Cam Newton, I really like this week. Not a lot of people are going to own him, so that would be more of the route. I would still take the good quarterback at the super low price, but I wouldn't fade anyone because of ownership because it's frankly just not going to be that high. And tight end kind of shakes out to be a lot of the same thing. Like when we look at the very top of tight end as it pertains to fansharesports.com tags for the week, like David Njoku is number 1. That makes a lot of sense. We just kind of talked about him. Zach Ertz is number 2, but he's super expensive. But now you're able to squeeze him in if you want to do a double pay down with like Duke and Kurz or Willie Snead and Nick Chubb, something like that. And then George Kittle is 3rd. He would be the logical pair up with Beathard, or maybe you can just play Kittle and get exposure to Beathard that way. But other than that, it's like Eric Ebron with no Jack Doyle around, O.J. Howard with who knows, people are still going to take a shot with Gronk against the Bears. Like, do you have any preference at tight end? Because it just seems like Njoku's going to be like 25% owned, and then no one else really knows what to do.
It's a hard week to find like swerves off of Njoku, to be honest. I do like George Kittle. I don't think he's going to be like super heavily owned because he's still 5K. I would want to pay up for Zach Ertz in the spot, I guess, but he's still going to be semi-popular. And I just feel like his price is too much. I mean, it's Carolina. It's not the best matchup. And if the Eagles get ahead, he could easily see like a 6 or 7 target game. I mean, that's what we've seen when the Eagles do get ahead. They throw a little bit less. So I don't really like that play either. I mean, the guy I was kind of interested in was James O'Shaughnessy of the Jags, but he's been banged up, and I didn't really see the injury report on him yet. But
he's out.
2,600. I mean, a pretty good matchup against the Texans.
He is ruled out with a hip injury now.
So there you go. I don't even need to talk about this guy.
David Greenidge at $2,500 is expected to start for the Jags now.
So, I mean, I'm not going to play the Grinch, David Greenidge, or whoever this guy is, right? So, I mean, there you go. There's just a lack of options this week. I feel like maybe just playing Njoku and just eating the chalk. I hate to do it, but I feel like that might be the play. I'll throw one name out. Charles Clay with Derek Anderson.
Oh, my God.
I wonder if he'll get a little bit of a bump.
I would rather play Gerald Everett at like the same price and just hope they don't throw to Josh Reynolds. They just throw to Gerald Everett.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Clay did lead the Bills in targets last week and like the week before, but that means absolutely nothing because they completed like 12 passes. So.
Yeah, that's never a good thing. It's tough this week. Like maybe Ebron is the one that falls through the cracks, but do we even? It's not that I fear Buffalo's defense in terms of shutting people down, although they've been quite good. Now that Hilton's going to be back, I feel like Tre'Davious White just kind of takes him out. Then you have Ebron, then you have Chester Rogers running around the field, soaking up a lot of these targets. But it just feels like where the Colts are such a high-paced team, it feels like Buffalo might. That's what they do to teams. They suck people into their shitty trap, and then it's like the offenses all just look bad against them. Like I don't even know if I want to play. Like, I'll play Ebron like season long to pay up for him on DraftKings. I don't know so much.
Yeah, it's the vortex of shit. It's just that's what the Bills do. They just suck the teams in, and it just turns horrible. But maybe it's a Gronk week. I mean, it kind of feels like maybe just if you're gonna take a chance, you might as well do it with Gronk. He's got 25-point upside and going to be low owned again. I know the trend isn't really there, but I do feel like the Patriots might be passing more this week. The Bears' run defense is pretty good, so maybe that's the play.
Yeah, so it still seems like an awful lot of money. Like 6K is down for Gronk, obviously, especially with Ertz being $7,100. But I guess there is a path for you to be able to pay up at tight end if you wanted to this week now because of the value that's opened up at running back. But I don't know. I think I'd still just rather pay up at running back.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, I mean, like I said, like Gronk could go for 25 points, but Njoku's getting like 10 targets a game now against like the so it's really hard for me to make an argument against him. I think Kittle, maybe Gronk, or some tournament plays you could think about. I think I like Kittle a little bit more because he's cheaper, and that game has a real potential to blow up. But how much at tight end this week?
Defenses to close us off, the highest projected one right now in terms of FanShare Sports tags. An overwhelming amount of tags have dropped onto the Indianapolis Colts. The Jags are second. The Bills are third. The Bills are actually tied with a bunch of teams like the Texans and the Eagles. I really like the Jags here. I don't see what's not to like. A great pass rush against an awful offensive line against a guy that gets sacked all the time and not afraid to commit turnovers. I have no problems. Colts are a fine play, but you could definitely fade them and get away with it, especially if they're going to breach double digits in terms of ownership. Like, I know it's Derek Anderson, but having Josh Allen at quarterback might actually lead to more fantasy points because Derek Anderson might make sensible things like throw the ball away instead of getting sacked. You don't want that. You want Josh Allen trying to extend plays and throwing it into traffic. That's primo news for a fantasy defense. I really like the Lions, though. Like the Lions, the Jets down at the bottom, or I just pay up for the Jags. I think that's how you want to play this week, or take the Ravens because everyone's so. I talked about this with Rick Gaiman on the DraftKings Pick Show over on Wednesday, which you can go back and watch right now. It's still very informative. He brought a lot of good stuff to that show in terms of potential contrarian plays, trends that we're going to see. Great threads on Twitter too last night about especially this Ravens-Saints game. No one wants to play Drew Brees because he, quote, sucks outside, yet no one wants to play the Ravens defense because they're playing the Saints. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, I don't mind targeting the defenses in some of these games where everyone's just targeting the offense because oftentimes it ends up with a lot of throwing and then one of the defenses goes off. So I think Baltimore is in play. I think even the Saints, you could think the Saints defense has actually been pretty good in the last few games. I mean, I think you could even give a little bit of credit to them, but I'm with you on the Colts. I'll say this. Once I heard Nathan Peterman wasn't starting, I mean, I'm not going to roster a chalky Colts team. I think Derek Anderson is actually an upgrade. So Colts defense really hasn't been good the last couple of weeks, getting a little bit healthier. But I'm completely with you on the Lions. Brock Osweiler's still throwing more interceptions and touchdowns over his career. So Lions have been trending in the right direction. Their secondary is really good. They actually do for some like positive regression interception-wise. I think 2,400 is a fantastic price. I'm not sure if they're getting Ziggy Ansah back or if he's a game-time decision, but their pass rush has been good without him lately too. So I think that's a great spot. They're my favorite D this week.
Yeah, I have the Colts projected around 17% ownership. That's just too high.
Yeah,
it's too high.
I think it's like you said. I mean, if it's Allen or Peterman, I get it. But I think Derek Anderson is a smarter quarterback. I think he's probably better at this point than both those players. So I don't think you're going to see as many crazy things happen. Maybe we're wrong. You'll just suck it up. But I don't know. I don't like the spot. Not if they're chalky anyways.
The Saints are really interesting. I wasn't even really considering them. Only 2,200 on the road. They have 3 sacks in every game except for week 1 against Tampa. That's interesting.
It's like we said. I mean, if you're like me and you're kind of anti-chalk Joe Flacco or something like that, or you just don't like this game for offense, I mean, yeah. I mean, look at the defenses. They're both cheap and they're both good enough that they could overcome this for a big game. So, yeah, the Saints have definitely been playing better late, though.
Yeah, the other one that I would throw into that mix, too, just because they're going to be relatively unowned, which I found surprising, was the Texans defense. Like, everyone's taking the Jags against Houston. Makes a lot of sense. But you can make the exact same case for Houston against Jacksonville. Like, you and I talked about this, the Saints play against the Ravens, where everyone's loading up on Flacco. Like, oh, that's great. It was almost like we talked about the Chiefs defense against Blake Bortles 2 weeks ago. What if Blake Bortles shows up and all of a sudden Kansas City's awful defense just gets pick sixes? And it turned out that's actually what happened. It's hard to script that into anything, but Texans D against Blake Bortles, it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Saints still have playmakers, right? Like Cam Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore. So, these guys are good players. They're capable of making a big play. And Joe Flacco's still Joe Flacco, right? So he's I mean, if he reverts back to semi-elite Joe Flacco, then, I mean, you're in for a good game. So,
all right, Geoff Ulrich at the Fantasy Grind on Twitter. Check him out on DK Live. Let us know what's going on with you, my man.
Yeah, definitely. Just check out the DK playbook. Got the tournament plays and some contrarian or swerve plays for this week up as they always are. You can definitely download the DK Live app as well for football stuff. Doing updates for player profiles throughout the week.
Can we talk about the DK Live app for just 1 second?
I think we should.
I have it open, and this isn't just like a stupid plug because, DraftKings, but it is the best of the score apps. To follow the games, it's by far the best.
It is because, you go on the NFL website and it crashes halfway through the day. The DK Live app is great because then you can see the fantasy points accumulating as you go. It's something I use on Sundays every day. If I'm not watching a game, I use the DK Live app. It's easily the best. I agree.
Yeah, and you get like the play-by-play is about as live as you can get it for like updates, and you can stream the game like radio-wise through the app as well if you just want to like tune into certain games. It just has a whole bunch of good features. Like I used to use the Score app a lot, and the Score app's fine, but it's just slow. Like it's like 5 minutes behind. I don't want that.
Yeah. No, and the other thing, there's a lot of like interesting features. I don't even know half the things about the app. I should, but like you can go and look at like high scores at like position and like how people are doing. I mean, if you really get in there and you can filter the news and stuff like that, it's honestly, it's an amazing app in my opinion.
Yeah, and you can correlate the DK Live app with the DraftKings app and sort of you can highlight the players that you want to follow the most and sort of have them like on a side screen. Anything happens to them, you get a push alert. Hey, giant play from Kirk Cousins this week. It's like, oh, perfect. So it's the perfect app to have open. You want to turn your notifications on that. Plus, you'll find out when Geoff and I have released articles and it gets pushed out like a day
Exactly, yeah.
A day
or
after
us.
the fact. Yeah.
What more could you want?
Exactly. All right, I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Sub to the Pat Mayo Experience Pod wherever you can download podcasts. Remember, smash the like button, leave your DK handle in the comment section, and give me a projection of Nick Chubb's ownership for Week 7 in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. Full injury rundown out later on Friday. It's going to be a quickie, but we're going to tackle all the ramifications and snap shares and potential outlook and trade value of all the injuries that have occurred and the trades from the crazy Friday in the NFL. So make sure to download both, make sure to like both, and hey, you'll make me a happy camper. Anyway, good luck in the Week 7 Millionaire Maker. Go win some cash, all right? I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!